Yesterday, the High Court Judge Antony Mrima declared that the clearance of the 4 presidential candidates was null and unconstitutional according to the Article 37 of the Constitution. Does this mean it's a breakthrough for the independent candidates who are thrown out of the race? And to get more information on this topic, I am joined by a presidential candidate and also the party leader for TGN party, Muthiora Kariara. Welcome to Havana TV.
Thank you very much for having me on Havana TV. Yeah. It's always a pleasure to shed light, especially where an injustice has occurred. And yesterday was a historic day with the landmark ruling that was delivered at the High Court by Antony Mrima.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Muthiora, how has it been like since the dramatic burning of your voters' card in Bomas of Kenya? And also, what does this ruling mean to you people who are thrown out of the race?
Well, I'm elated that it has come to pass in a very short time.
Yes.
That my protest against the IEBC's registration of presidential candidates was a sham. I was barred from continuing in the race based on a law that has now been declared as unconstitutional, invalid, null and void. We tried to get the commission to do the right thing, but then they wouldn't give us audience, let alone just adhere to what the law says. The chairman of the IEBC is required to have the competence of a Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Kenya. So when it's in black and white in our constitution about what should be required of candidates to run in an election, it defeats me how he chose to misread and misinterpret our law and apply that which had been inserted through Parliament as an amendment to the original law. So I'm glad that finally our nation is coming of age as far as electoral justice is concerned. It's heartbreaking that a commission that is at the center of democracy chooses to spear at the heart of the very core of its existence, and that is democracy. So I'm happy that for once we are getting to remedy problems before they occur. Because if this election was to proceed with the injustice that was meted out on independent candidates, it would be invalidated. Because then, as has been declared now, the whole process would be invalid, null and void. It's not just about outcomes. It's also important that the processes that lead to those outcomes adhere to the rule of law. So I'm happy and hopeful that this election, which, as I had said on the 6th of June when I was barred from running, that it is the most unethically permissive election that Kenya has ever had since independence, now has a chance to redeem itself.
Yeah. And still on that case, according to the IEBC Elections Act, interfering with any election materials, for example, how you banned your voter's card, you're liable to the law. Will you still be on the ballot? What if this comes to you later on?
Flora, if indeed what you are alleging is what happened, action would have been taken by now against me. What I know and I have said in various platforms is IEBC involved itself in clerical hindrances and technicalities to bar candidates from running in this election instead of focusing on the fidelity to the rule of law and constitutionalism. I have said before that unless changes are made to our electoral laws and systems, I will not be offering myself for any elective position in Kenya. I have been a champion for electoral justice, and throughout this whole process we have been engaging all mechanisms to ensure that at least in 2022 we will have a free, fair and credible election. And I'm glad that our court system has caught up with some of the malpractices before they are committed. So yes, we are not where we were on the 6th. The process has improved. So I could consider offering myself to the race again. But then there are still issues that need to be resolved. Like I'm sure you've had the debate about whether to have a register at every polling station or to just use the KIMS kit, amongst other issues that are still being canvassed in court. So I'm still thinking about it. What I'm disappointed about is how Kenyans reacted to the injustice that was meted out on independent candidates. Most of the people who are vocal about politics in Kenya have basically chosen sides. They are either with Azimio or with Kenya Kwanza. But then they are not the only people who live in Kenya. They are not the only people with a stake. At the moment, if you look at the polls, the number of those who do not belong to either camp is greater than both camps combined. So it's important for all of us to exercise tolerance and to understand that an injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. So when a candidate such as Muthiora Kariara, who was running for president, is victimized, we should all stand with them and ensure that there is adherence to the rule of law for everyone. But instead what Kenyans did was stand on the other side and throw stones. We should all remember that it's our duty to uphold and defend our constitution. And our constitution says discrimination of any form in the electoral process should not be condoned. Yeah, so I hope we will learn and we will exercise caution when dealing with matters, especially bearing in mind that we are still a fledgling democracy. We are not there yet.
And it's only 33 days remaining to the elections, and of this ruling comes. Do you think that could push for elections to be held on a later date other than August 9th?
I know we are focused on having our elections on the 9th of August because that's what our constitution says. But our constitution also says that our elections should be free, fair, and credible. If holding the elections on the 9th will interfere with our elections not being free, fair, and credible, is it a worthy exercise? That's the question we should busy ourselves with at the moment. Yesterday, all those who had been locked out of this race on the basis of having not met the threshold of presenting to IEBC the required number of ID copies for their supporters were given a shot to run. Now, if I am allowed to run for this election, bear in mind that there are candidates who have already been campaigning. So then it will not be fair for me and everyone else that will be rejoining the race that we get only 30 days to campaign when others have had a longer duration. The ideal situation would be considering to stop this election, to plan, to reschedule, because it's not an election if it's not going to be free, fair, and credible. And a question I would like us to ask ourselves is, if a candidate can be denied a right to run in an election, will that election deliver justice to the voter whose role in that election is just to show up and cast their votes?
And do you feel like IEBC has been compromised this year, and can they really give us a free and fair elections?
Compromised would be a heavy word to use, but what I can say is they are ill prepared. We have about 33 days to the election, and yet so many things have not been ironed out. I know they are burning the midnight oil to deliver these elections, but I doubt that they're going to cut the standards as was set by the Supreme Court in 2017. I highly doubt.
Yes.
But I hope working together, because the one thing they have not done is proper stakeholder engagement. If they do that, then possibly we'll salvage the situation. But if they continue to work in silos, and for every query that is raised, they throw an essay at it, then I doubt that this election will end up not being contested.
Perhaps finally you can tell us your take on the recently launched manifestos by the 4 presidential candidates. What do you take of that?
I would say the manifestos, some of them are well researched. There are bits in each that is inspiring. I am glad that they're issue focused, and for once they have tried to a great extent to align their promises with the Vision 2030, which will guarantee continuity for whoever is elected. What I'm disappointed about is how these manifestos do not quite detail how they are going to fund their activities. There is a manifesto by the Roots Party which clearly outlines how they are going to raise the money for their budgets to deliver their promise to Kenyans, but it's based on a premise that in our current law is illegal.
Absolutely.
But I hope all the others would have borrowed a leaf from that and not say we are going to cut on corruption, and then from the kitty called corruption we will take money and put it into projects. So it's a fair shot. It's an improvement from past elections manifesto, and I would say that this country is moving forward. Let us focus on building our institutions and hope that in consecutive elections, IEBC will not be grappling with the issues it's grappling with at the moment.
What's your final shot to your supporters, to Kenyan voters as we head to the elections?
I will say that we've been vindicated in our statement that Kenya is now at a place where laws are made not to protect the oppressed from the oppressor, but to protect the oppressor from the law and the oppressed. Knowing that, then we cannot go to bed with all our eyes closed. We must focus on knowing that state capture is real in Kenya. And if we are to slay the dragon of corruption, then collectively we cannot allow ourselves to be divided along tribal lines. Kenya will be built by Kenyans for Kenyans, or we will lose this nation to those who value what we have here. And in our lifetime, we'll become servants or worse, slaves. You have seen the high cost of living, and we are told that this is just a precursor of what is coming.
Yeah.
We have seen ourselves get into a commercialized state of politics, which means those who buy their way into office will first reap whatever they invested before they start to serve the people. Let us stay woke. Let us liberate Kenya. It's possible. We can make this nation great, but we all must punch in our weight. We are who we've been waiting for. You've had time to examine the 4 candidates. And I'm glad that the race has been reopened, because lots of Kenyans have been asking themselves, is this it? Now the options are wide open.
Thank you so much. And with yesterday's ruling, the question that remains is, if this at all delays the printing of the ballot papers, will it push for the delay of elections that are set to be held on 9th August? But it's a matter of wait and see. You've been watching Havana TV. My name is Flora Limuki. Thank you so much, Muthiora.